movie.
Anna Davola, which is the witch, sadist witch, she loved Anna. Like, she was her maybe her lover. And then there was Dorothea, aka Dorca. It's just funny. That was Helena's friend. And a young, disfigured manservant called Fixo, which I think I read meant lad. She just called him that. He kind of looked like Igor. He was deformed. And he would do anything that the Countess wanted. Like, that kid was young, and whatever she said goes, and he was fine with it.
Especially, like, that's not surprising, because in that era, if you gave birth to a deformed child, you usually threw it in the gutter.
Yeah, and they said that she could have, like, bought him as a novelty. Right. You know what I mean?
Like, she's like, ooh.
He was kind of like a sideshow.
Right. She
thing.
went to his peasant parents and say, oh, I'll buy him for a piece of gold. Here,
and the fact that she was giving him a life, he would do anything for her.
Right. He was very loyal and devoted to her.
Exactly. It's said that Anna was evil and sadistic, and she's the one that taught them all how to torture young women.
Nice.
To the level of what we've heard.
Ugh.
Later they brought on a washerwoman named Kateria. I'm sorry, I'm really bad at this.
It's okay. I have hiccups, so, you know.
And it said that girls were lured to the castle with promises of work. Because it was kind of prestigious for a family whose someone in their family works in the castle. If
you're a serf, especially, you're usually working the land till you die. And like, ooh, come work in the castle. Oh, yeah, it's a better life.
And then there's bodies coming out real quick. So these girls are going in, and the same amount are coming out, but they're not alive anymore. But, they're just serfs. It doesn't matter. No one cares. Now, Anna was older than Erzsabet, much older. And she passed away in 1609. Which was heartbreaking for Elizabeth because she cared for her a lot. Mm-hmm. But she easily replaced her real quick. And she met a widowed tenant farmer because Elizabeth had a soft spot for widows. She wanted to help them. So she met this tenant farmer's wife.
You were young and unmarried, then you were disposable. But
yeah. Her name was Ariza Marjoniara or something like that. Google it. You'll find it.
Just Google it.
So, they've been using up a lot of the young ladies in the area with cholera happening too. And it is happening at that time. But there's not many 10 to 14-year-old serfs anymore. So she convinced Elizabeth to maybe start luring noble young ladies to the castle. Oh. So, with a bright idea, they decided to open up a finishing school for noble girls. But then suddenly, these noble girls were going, and they also were dying.
Of cholera.
But guess what? When noble girls die, people start asking questions.
Yes.
So word got out. Nobles are getting pissed. Where's my girl? I sent her to you, now she's dead? Like, they're mad.
And it's not just them, it's my neighbors, and we have sent 2 daughters, and it's like they're all dying? That doesn't seem right.
Right. So we're got to the Hungarian king, Matthias II. He sent Thurzo, who was the one that Fernic
asked to look
out for them, which is also her cousin, to investigate, because he was like one of his people. Mm-hmm. I can't remember his title, but he was one of those people. And he, with a raid of men, went to the castle to see the Countess. It said that when he got there, what he found was a dead girl laying in the hallway, many others dying and dead throughout the house, and some waiting for torture in cells. Her servants were immediately arrested: Dorothea, Helena, Fixco, and Kateria. It said that Ersk, whatever you say her name, escaped, but was later arrested also. Elizabeth, because of her standing, did not get arrested.
Of course not.
But she just stayed at the castle. The rest got arrested. In 1611, this is when it happened, there were 2 trials. The servants that were her accomplices gave their evidence after being tortured, and they were convicted within days of giving their evidence. Mm-hmm. it said that Elizabeth, during the trial, was trying to get herself out of trouble. She showed up at the court with a noble woman whose daughter was in her care for the finishing school that had died. And the noble woman testified that, no, my daughter did die of natural causes. She was not murdered while she was there. But, Turzo, or however you say his name, he didn't care. He didn't want to hear it. He was like, it doesn't matter. We have all this testimony from her servants. It doesn't matter.
Because we all know torture works from our witch
yes.
episode. When you torture someone, they definitely will tell you the truth.
And then she said that, no, that's not what happened. Or no. They all died because one of the noble girls went nuts and she killed everyone because she was jealous and wanted all their jewels. And they were in the king and Thurzo were like, no, we don't believe that. We're not buying it.
Yeah.
So they collected evidence and testimony from 300 local witnesses. And from what the 300 witnesses said, plus the ones that were in trial, her accomplices are in trial, these are just a listing of the things that happened in that castle. This is where it gets real good.
Yay.
Beatings with barbed lashes and heavy sigils. Dragging naked outside during the cold in winter, with being doused with cold water until you froze to death.
Oh, that's nice.
Lots of needles and pins being stuck under fingernails and between fingers.
God.
Torture that tortured up to 10 times a day and could last over 6 hours.
God.
She said that she would demand them to beat the servants, those accomplices, and if they didn't, she'd do it herself. She would beat them so hard that her clothes would become saturated in blood, and she had to change her clothes. Be saturated.
I heard about that.
She would lash them so hard that chunks of flesh and blood would go flying everywhere. Yeah.
Yuck!
She would use candles and hold their hands over it until they turned black.
God.
All her tortures were long and drawn out. There was no little lashing. It was like hours.
She definitely was related to Vlad Dracula.
Yeah. One person was actually forced to cook and eat her own flesh.
Oh.
She took bites out of girls' shoulders, faces, and breasts.
She herself?
Mm-hmm. They used hot prods to burn them, and one thing said that they would put the prods in their vaginas.
God.
Hot pokers, yeah.
That's awful.
Yeah. Horrible.
Ah.
Beatings until dead, and the blood would pool on the floor, and cleaning up, you'd have to scoop it up with your hands. It'd be so thick and so much. She tended to do her torturing during severe times of stress, and doing things out in public stressed her out. When she had to go to events and stuff, it really stressed her. So she would torture people on the way to the event, on the way back from the event, because she was so stressed out about having to be around people.
You're my, instead of meditation,
yes.
This chick is like, I'm going to torture you till you bleed.
Yeah.
Because I'm stressed out. So, just relax.
I mean, minor things. If at first she started out with, like, if you stole, she'd take the coin you stole and get it hot and burn it on your hand. It fit the crime, kind of, in their minds. Right. And then it just got to the point where she was just bludgeoning them and stabbing them and doing
the burn
things.
Coin thing sounds appropriate for the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That definitely sounds like something that they would do then, like anybody. Yes. Not that it was a good thing, but that sounds like on brand for
or
that
she'd
era.
smash their hands if they took
right.
something.
I mean, they used to, like, cut your hand off.
Yeah.
I would burn me instead of cutting my hand off.
Yeah.
Because, I need that.
She would take needles and puncture through their lips so they couldn't open their mouths.
Oh! It's horrific. I can't.
The accomplices each of them said a different number, but they feel 31 to 50 girls were killed. Not just tortured, but killed. There was more tortured. Because not all of them died. But the testimony of a girl that wasn't a noble person wouldn't count for anything. But these accomplices saw it with their own eyes, so that's why they were taking what they had to say. And they aged between 10 to 14 years old.
It's such an odd, like, that she would pick that age specifically.
Well, that was the age where the girls came in for servants.
Right, but I mean, you could get older servants. You know what I mean? But that age, it's like prepubescent, basically. Yeah. She was targeting girls. And some things were
suggested that the intimacy of some of it was sexual. Like she got some kind of whatever from it.
Yuck. Gross.
So the second trial, after the accomplices gave all their testimony, and you could read all this stuff. It's available. You can read all the testimony. And there's a couple books that I read, and I'll link them. And the testimony of each of the accomplices is in there. And you can read the whole trial.
Oh, but if they were tortured to get it, like how much of it do you actually believe? You know what I mean?
Yeah, you'll see some stuff.
Okay.
Hold on, Margaret.
Okay.
The second trial was a servant. Her name was Susanna. And she gave testimony that she saw a register in Elizabeth's handwriting tracking her victims, saying there were at least 650 girls. However, this evidence never came to be. So, because they were never able to produce the actual register that in her handwriting, it wasn't enough to convict Elizabeth, but it was enough to convict the servants of 650.
Oh.
Because that makes sense.
Yeah.
So they were saying, well, Elizabeth probably was the 30 to 50, but they did the 650 because they're servants. It just makes no sense.
It makes no sense. It's like, well, you know, we can't really convict her of it because she's noble, but you aren't. So even though she told you to do it, you're going to do the time and she's not.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just like.
Exactly. So, Anna, they all tried to blame Anna. They're saying it was her at first because Anna was dead.
Oh, yeah.
And then they're all blaming each other because you're getting tortured. And they're like, I didn't do it. They did it. And then they all started blaming Elizabeth. All her accomplices started blaming her, trying to get the blame off themselves so they could get out of this.
I'm sure it was all of them.
Which I'm sure every one of them was involved. Yeah. Helena and Dorothea were named the main torturers and sentenced as witches because they used their fingers to hurt Christians, it said. They pulled each one of their fingers off. And then they burnt them alive. So
that sounds like
they didn't live long afterwards.
That's on brand too for
that time. And Fixo,
so you did a witches, you burned him alive.
Because he was young, they just decapitated him, then burned him afterwards.
Oh, that's nice.
And then Erzsabet was executed, but it doesn't say how. And Katerina escaped the death sentence because every one of the other ones said that she didn't really have anything to do with it. And it said in some sources that I read that she actually didn't want to, and she actually would feed when they would deny food, she'd sneak food to people. So Susanna, who was one of the servants that gave testimony about the 650 girls, she said that Katerina wasn't one of the evil ones, that she shouldn't have to die.
Ridiculous. That's kind of like odd. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's odd that the other didn't also stuck up for her and said that.
Yeah.
Because they were turning on each other left and right to try to get. But
probably because all the rest of them were all guilty of it.
Yeah. Elizabeth was never convicted. Never was on trial at all.
Of course not.
The king of Hungary really wanted her to be, though.
He wanted her money is what he wanted.
Her family negotiated with the king and said, if you forgive, we will forgive your debt to her and her husband if you don't try her. But, however, her family declared her a menace to their name. And Thurzo had her walled into her bedchamber for the rest of her days. There was a hole big enough for some air to get in and food to be slid in. I don't know where she peed and pooped.
Probably in a little
a pot or something.
There's probably a hole in the floor.
Probably gross.
Yuck.
She lived there for 3 years and was found dead when one of the guards looked in on August 21st, 1614. And she knew she was 1614. She was born in 1565.
50s.
Yeah, and that about
around
right
50
for the time. She knew she was going down, so she made sure her will had her estate to be sent to her children and put in before she got in trouble, because she knew that once she did, her will would not mean anything. So she had the foresight to say, I'm going to make sure my kids... So her children did get her land and her estates, which they should, because it's not their